Alright guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. So in today's video I'm going to be going over 5 things that I wish I knew when I started streamer fishing. I'm a fly fisherman. I fish well over 100 days a year, probably more like 150 days a year at this point. And streamer fishing is how I have caught my biggest fish by far. I've been fortunate to be really successful streamer fishing, and I know a lot of people have questions about how to streamer fish or how to streamer fish in general. So hopefully these 5 things will help you become a better streamer fisherman, or at least give you a really good place to start. But anyways, without further ado, these are 5 things that I wish I knew when I started streamer fishing that would make me a better angler today if I'd known them when I started.
Before we get started, my intent with this video is to have something that fly anglers who want to learn to streamer fish can use for years to come. So if you're someone who's been streamer fishing for a while, leave a comment and let people know what's something you wish you knew when you started streamer fishing. And then like a few comments that you find interesting or important. That way new streamer fishermen can read through the comments and learn something that is beyond this video, because I know I could almost write a book on this topic, so there are of course things that I'm leaving out. Alright, let's start out with number 1, fly line. Weighted fly line is only good for certain scenarios. If you're fishing a large river from a boat or need to get the streamer down deep in some fast current, then sinking line works well. But in most scenarios, especially in smaller rivers and creeks out east, sinking line does little more than force your streamer into a certain direction and get it stuck on the bottom of the river. Floating line, or something like a mono rig, allows you to manipulate the direction of the streamer, which in turn allows you to trigger more strikes.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, streamer line. Let's talk about it. So, I'd say something that's pretty common amongst streamer fishermen is to throw weighted line, whether it be some sort of intermediate or some sort of sink tip line. I do not fish sinking line, and the reason is pretty freaking simple. Obviously you guys can look at this river here. It's pretty shallow, normally pretty shallow, and that's true with many of the creeks and rivers that I fish out east where I'm from. So you might be like, what does that have to do with streamer line? If I threw sinking line here, I would get stuck on the bottom of the river all the time. My line would get stuck at the bottom of the river, not even my fly. So to avoid that, I throw floating line. But there's another reason I throw floating line, and that is because if I don't throw into a tree, that is because I can be working a streamer down current, flip it one way, flip it the other. I can control the head direction of the streamer. I can be working it down current, then flip and throw it up current. If I'm throwing weighted line, once that line hits the water, that streamer is locked into going downstream. And although that can be really effective, it's not the most effective way to catch a trout on a streamer. I just had a fish move right there. See if he'll eat. Oh God, that looks like a rainbow trout. Oh, came off. That was a bad hook set because I was talking and only half paying attention. You guys get the point. With floating line, I am able to work the streamer and control the head direction and kind of put it wherever I want to. Whereas if I throw sinking line, I do not have nearly as much versatility when I'm streamer fishing. Gee, my gosh. Well, there's another brownie. Come here, buddy. Wait, no, you're a freaking tiger trout. Great. Sorry guys, tiger trout are cool, but they're not wild. They're stocked in here. So when I see a tiger trout, there's like a sense of coolness, but then also a sense of like, really? How'd you get here?
Let's talk about leaders. For streamer fishing, you want a short leader for not only castability, but also for when those fish inevitably follow almost to your rod tip. For most of my streamer fishing, I'll use just straight 12 or 20 pound fluoro with a lighter section of 10 to 16 pound fluoro maybe a foot from the streamer. Most of my leaders for streamer fishing sit between 3 to 6 feet depending on water clarity, with the longer leaders being used for clearer water. But my golden rule is to never use less than 10 pound test or 2x tippet, and rarely will I ever even go that low. If you're brand new to streamer fishing, Cortland makes a streamer leader that is shorter and works amazingly well.
Alright guys, let's talk about leaders. So, in general, streamer leaders are shorter than regular leaders you'd use for regular fishing, or fly fishing I should say. So, your leader when you're streamer fishing can range anywhere from like 3 to 6 feet. And the reason you want it shorter is because A, it doesn't matter, and you really want your fly line to be able to throw the streamer out. Second reason you have a short leader is that a lot of times brown trout, just like any other predator, will follow the fly in a long ways before they eat. And when that happens, you want to be able to pull that line, that fly line, up into your guides and kind of have like the ability to set the hook really well, even when they follow it in and they eat, 3, 4, 5 feet from your feet. So there's two pretty good reasons why, I use a shorter leader when I'm streamer fishing. Oh gosh, that was a small fish. Probably a little brown or something. Those things are aggressive, man. Really aggressive. What I was gonna say though is that two good reasons why, I throw shorter leaders and why everybody that streamer fishes throws shorter leaders. But another thing that's worth kind of mentioning is that you really want to throw heavy line when you're streamer fishing because you're just fishing for big brown trout. I mean, realistically, when I'm streamer fishing, I'm looking for 20+ inch browns, which is something that, usually you don't catch, when you're nymphing or something in most river systems. So with that in mind, I'm almost always using, like right now I have 2X on as the bottom part of my leader, probably 6 foot 2X leader, and I would never ever go any less than that. I mean, even that's kind of pushing it. So when you're streamer fishing, short leader, heavy line. I mean, even in this scenario where the water's relatively clear, the sun's starting to pop through the clouds, I'm still using heavier line. I'm still using a short leader because that's just what you need to use to catch these fish, or at least to be able to land the fish. And in my experience, when they're streamer fishing, or when the fish are eating streamers, they're eating bait fish, and the last thing they're worried about is the line. I mean, they're coming in there hot. They're really trying to eat those streamers, and they're not caring so much about what line you're throwing. Oh, God bless, huge fish. God bless America. Woo! That thing, I thought it was tiny. It was gigantic. Yes, baby. Throwing upstream like that into those real fast current. And that fish was sitting, he could have been underneath the rock. I don't know where he came from, but that's incredible. Trying to teach you guys how to catch big browns, and I'm catching them myself.
Streamer size and weight. A general rule of thumb is the lighter the streamer is, the better their action is. A completely weightless CJ Sluggo or a double deceiver on sinking line looks so incredible you'll think you're fishing with an actual fish. But it's tough to use those in a lot of scenarios. A jig streamer can get down quickly and hit undercut banks like a champion, but they can be tough to cast and have a jigging motion rather than a swimming motion. Then there's the middle ground, which is usually where I find myself. A good example of the middle ground is a sex dungeon. It's light enough that it has a good swimming motion if worked correctly, but heavy enough to sink even with floating line because of the dumbbell eyes. These types of streamers are downright deadly and are how I've caught a majority of my big fish.
Alright guys, so while I'm sitting in here in the jungle flipping streamers underneath trees, I'd like to say that streamer size and weight is extremely important. I usually tell people to kind of throw streamers based off of how big a fish they think they're going to catch. So like, if you think the biggest fish in your stream is going to be 18 inches, then you should probably throw something, some of the smaller type streamers, just because those 18-inch fish probably aren't going to chase a 6-inch streamer. Well, let me take that back. They will, but you just have a better chance of catching fish if you, throw something more realistic to the size of fish you're, going after. So I mentioned that there were 3 sizes or 3 types of streamers in my mind. And for me personally, I like to fish with the streamers that have weight to them, but aren't jig streamers. And the reason being is that just kind of works for the setup that I throw. 90% of the time, I'm throwing floating line. That is why I throw streamers like this circus peanut, which is what I just caught that big brown on. Circus peanuts are great. Sex dungeons are great. Butt monkeys, cheech leeches, like that's the style of streamer that I probably throw the most. And as I mentioned, those streamers, you can still get them to swim and look really good in the water, but they'll sink down, so you can still get, several feet of depth even with floating line when you're fishing these streamers. And to be honest with you, they're just easy to work. Like, rarely have I been out fishing And like I can give somebody a sex dungeon that's never really streamer fished and they can catch fish on it, which is huge, huge when it comes to trout fishing.
Another thing worth mentioning that I skipped over here is that larger streamers push more water. So as the water gets muddier, it's best to throw larger flies because it is easier for the fish to locate them. And if the water is clear, do the opposite and downsize your streamer. Alright, let's move on to number 4, streamer color. A general rule of thumb is the lighter or clearer the water is, the lighter the streamer color. And the darker or muddier the water is, the darker the streamer color. That may seem a little counterintuitive, but you'll just have to trust me. And if the water is clear, go natural and match the hatch. Matching the hatch is as simple as doing some research on what sort of bait fish are in your river system and then simply choosing a streamer color that closely resembles that fish. I find that tan and olive usually work best for me, but that's because I'm usually trying to imitate chubs or suckers. If the water is off colored, I'll go to black or some darker streamer color like brown. And usually my last ditch effort, if nothing else seems to be working or the fish seem to be hesitant, is to pick something really bright. White can sometimes work well because when fish start to die, they lose their color and become lighter. So light tan, white, pink, and other bright colors can induce a take when others may not.
All right guys, so streamer color. So today, as you guys can see, although it's raining, as I showed at the beginning of the video, it's kind of stopped now, but the water is relatively clear. And the water's clear, I go really natural. So I've got an olive circus peanut on right now. And essentially, I just try to match the hatch. I think a lot of people who streamer fish, or a lot of people who look at streamer fishing from the outside think that, you know, you just pick, oh my gosh! Dude! It wasn't a huge brown, but the way he hit was insane. Oh my gosh, that was crazy. That fish came out from that root ball and smashed it. I don't think he was gigantic. He's probably, you know, he's a solid fish. I don't know, 18 inches. Anyways, what I was saying is that it's super important, just as with every type of fishing, that you match the hatch with streamers. In other words, this time of year in the spring, when the chubs and suckers are running up these creeks and rivers to spawn, you want to throw something that kind of looks like a chub or a sucker, and so on and so forth. If you're fishing a river like the White River, for example, has a lot of shad, so a lot of people throw big white streamers. So that's essentially what you're doing. Now what starts getting tricky is when, for whatever reason, the stream is off color. So if this stream was off color, my go-to is to throw black. Brown is another one of my favorite colors for slightly off-colored water. And essentially what you're doing is you're just trying to pick out a streamer that, you know, essentially is the same profile as the bait fish, but it's something that the fish will easily be able to see and pick out. So yeah, long story short, match the hatch if you're throwing in clear water. And then the darker the water gets, the darker your streamer gets. Also, the darker the water gets, the bigger your streamer gets. Whereas the opposite, if the water's really low and clear, you don't want to throw something that's like super, super big unless you're fishing for gigantic trout, because you're more likely to spook the fish. Jeez, dude, what a hit. Whoa, 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 buddy. Right in this little pocket. Come here. You're big, but you're not big enough to... Golly, he's fighting. Oh, I foul hooked him. That's why he's fighting so weird. There's a beautiful brown right there. There's a huge debate, or something that I've seen in the comments pretty often, is that people get upset when fish get foul hooked. They're like, it doesn't count, it's snagged, or whatever. I think if you're nymphing, you could probably have that argument. But if you've streamer fished for any amount of time, or you know anything about streamer fishing, you know that you're gonna foul hook quite a few brown trout. And the reason being is that a lot of these streamers are pretty big. And a brown trout, a lot of times when they come up and they eat a bait fish, the first thing they'll try to do is smack it to try to kill it. It's something that's very common in predators. Muskie do the same thing. Bass will do the same thing. But they come up and smack it to kill it. And when they smack it, a lot of times you'll hook them in random places, because to you feel a hit and you're setting into it, and really the brown's just swinging at it. And a lot of times you'll set the hook and pull and you'll just hook them in some random spot. So it's a pretty common phenomenon. So for me personally, when I foul hook a trout when I'm streamer fishing, I don't really have a problem with that.
Work the streamer with your rod, not the line. This one seems to be something that everybody struggles with at first, and I'm not saying it's always the best option. But to truly get the swimming motion on a streamer, it's almost always necessary to do more than just monotonously strip the streamer in. Also, don't be afraid to introduce some slack when you work a streamer. This will allow the streamer to swim back and forth and give the materials on the fly a chance to breathe.
One of the first lessons I have to talk about is just how you work a streamer. So if you watch, I've seen a lot of, ooh, good brown just moved off this streamer. Sit back there a little further. What I was gonna say though is that these streamers, you'll see a lot of people just strip them in kind of like this. Hold on. You'll see a lot of people just like very boringly just do something like this, which I'm not saying this doesn't work, but you're really not making the streamer move or do anything special or crazy. However, if you come up to a spot like this and you throw in and you make the rod tip jiggle and stuff, you'll be able to see that your streamer kind of comes to life. So if you cast out and you just strip it in, it's gonna look very bland, very boring. You start, wiggling your rod tip like you see me do. Like even if I'm just stripping in the streamer, I'm wiggling that son of a gun like crazy because I want that streamer to swim. I've said this before, but I can tell really quickly whether someone's streamer fished for a long time or not, just based on how they work the streamer. And that's like the dead giveaway to me, is to just see someone like just stripping the streamer in with nothing to it. Might come through here with a different streamer here in a second. But this streamer is getting fish to move. So it's so hard for me to change from it when it's working. But is it really working? It's a great question. Got him, huge fish. Gigantic trout. Oh my gosh, huge, beautiful brown trout. Prettiest trout of all time. Come on, dude. Yes! Yes! That's a gigantic trout! Guys, I don't know if this is the fish I moved right there or not, but this thing is gigantic. Look how pretty it is. Look at the tail. Chill out, brother. I know, buddy. Look at the tail. Look how orange that fish is. Let's go! And that's how you catch a big brown trout on a streamer. So just to reiterate, work it with your rod tip. Don't just strip it in. Make that streamer look like a bait fish. Because these fish like this, if you do not make it look real, they will not commit. And this fish committed because I made that streamer look real.
So those are 5 things I wish I had known when I started streamer fishing. But I just want to go through a few rapid fire tips for streamer fishing for those of you who made it this far. One is that hook sets are tough when streamer fishing, and the number one thing I can say is set the hook as hard as possible. Strip setting is the best way to do it, but that's not always possible. Regardless, you want to set for the stars. 2. Finding good water is almost as important as any amount of skill you may or may not possess. It doesn't matter how good of a fisherman you are, if there isn't a 20-inch fish in your river system, then you're not going to catch a 20-inch fish. 3. Never sit in one spot for too long. As you can see in this video, I never sat and beat a run to death. I always make a few casts and move on. When a big fish is active, they'll let you know. 4. Play the weather. As you can see in this video, it was overcast or raining the entire time. Playing the weather and learning when big fish eat is also a huge reason for many anglers' success. But that's a rabbit hole I won't go down at the moment. So there are a few last tips to throw your way. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments below. I'll probably be doing some more streamer fishing videos here in the coming weeks. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you know when I post my next video. Thanks for watching.